To have a look at Parse, XML Parse, which I just remind you is in the transform and in the add column. Generally, you'd probably want to transform them. But first of all, what are XML and JSON? JSON. Well, they are both things largely used on the internet. So if I start with XML, which is the older one of the two, that stands for Extendable Markup Language. And I'll show you an example of an XML file that I've got in Notepad. And this relates to a shopping trip. And I'm not going to go into all of the details of the XML, but suffice to say that it is fairly understandable. Yes, it's got a very strict syntax, but this course isn't about building XML or JSON files, it's about understanding or how to get the data from XML or JSON files. So I had a shopping trip. The shopper name was me, the weather was nice. And in fact, I had two shopping trips. The first one, I got bananas for $5, apples for $4, and cherries for $3. And then the second time, I got emeralds, diamonds, and furniture. I do my shopping in alphabetical order, roughly. And you notice there's no actual cost for any of those. It's null. So this is a perfectly well-formed XML file. Now, you don't just have to have one XML file. Now, I'm going to happen to use just one example, but we could have example 2 and example 3 and so forth further down. So all of this is contained in just one cell in my Excel. Alternatively, you might be importing it from text documents or down from the web directly. There might be lots of things you'll be doing with these XML files if you have, of course, to use them. So what I'm going to do now is load that XML file, and we'll see how it's presented. So click OK. And we have a new query, and as I said, all of this is in the one field, one row. So it literally is one piece of information. Now, so far, it is a text file, and it's very difficult for me to drill down. For instance, I can't tell you the cost of 4 apples, or apples being $4. I simply can't tell you that. So what I can do is I can drill down. And I do this by going to Transform, Parse, XML. And my XML is now changed into a table. Now, we've previously had a look at how to get tables out. You can press this little button, click on that, and our table then will disappear in favour of the actual parts of it. So if we just have a look at our example again, we'll see that we have a shopping trip, or the two shopping trips we got, and we have the shopping name and the weather. So let's expand, and we can use the original column name as a prefix. I'm not going to, I just want to see the name shopping trip and so forth. And shopping trip is still a table because you can see there were two shopping trips. So I'll expand that further. And we can see we've got an item and the shopping trip ID. So L1 and L2, and then the actual contents of it as well. So let's have a look. Again, I'm not going to use the original column name. That's a prefix. So here we have shopping trip L1 and shopping trip L2. So already our one row has expanded to 2 rows because there are 2 shopping trips. So just to remind you, we had one row with item number 1. It contained 2 shopping trips. Now we have 2 rows, both with an item number 1. So now I can expand each of these shopping trips. And in fact, if I wanted to click on the table and temporarily see what's underneath, I can do. So you can see bananas, apples, and cherries. So I'll just undo that. Or I could just use the arrow keys, and you can see it at the bottom. So now if I expand this further, you can see element and attribute. So the element being what it is, I got the bananas, apples, cherries, the attribute being the thing which is within these brackets, within these less than and greater than, but you can see it's the cost. Really, you don't need to focus too much on what elements are, what attributes are. All you need to know is you can keep expanding and expanding and expanding until you get to the actual data. So now we've got 6 rows of data, which is completely in line with what we've got in our XML file, and you can see bananas cost $5, apples cost 4, cherries cost 3, and emeralds, diamonds, and furniture were done in shopping trip L2 with a null cost, an unknown cost. Now, it's at this stage that really all we've done is click expand, 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 expand. That's all we've done to get from here, apart from going to transform XML, and we just click expand, 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 expand. But it's at here that you can be grateful that this is a macro, this is a series of instructions to the computer, because when the XML changes, assuming that it's in the same structure, then you don't have to do any of this, the computer's done it for you. So you load the data, you refresh the data, and the analysis changes automatically. So imagine this was not one item, imagine this was 100 items, 100 rows initially, right at the beginning. Well, it's exactly the same principle. All I will do is exactly what I've done here. I will transform, I would parse the XML, and then I'll click on this little icon here. So that is XML. There is, however, another, slightly newer version, and that's called JSON. Now, JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notification, and it's used quite often in web pages. And you can see I can describe the same sort of thing. It's a different format. We use these little brackets, these little squiggly brackets, but it's still all understandable, I think. So if I open up a JSON document, again, the computer has it all in one cell in Excel. So if I go to JSON, they're all in one cell. And again, what I can do is just transform it. I will parse it, so that says to the computer, this is JSON, read it as such. So it's a bit like changing the data type to JSON, except there is no JSON data type that the computer knows. And now you can see it is a record. So it contains the person's name, in this case, my name, because that was the first thing in the JSON, and then it contains another record within it, the shopping trip. So if I expand the record, you can see the shopping trip. There is one shopping trip. I'll expand this. Within the shopping trip, there are items. Each of those items is part of a record within a list. So I need to expand the list, and that will expand it onto new rows, and then expand the records. So list essentially going down, adding more rows, records adding more columns. So now you can see, just by clicking the same buttons as before, the computer has understood now, because I've told it it's a JSON document, that we have bananas at $5, apples at $4, cherries at $3. Now I just want to go back a step here to the list. You notice it said expand to new rows, but the alternative is extract values. So if I extract values with a comma between them, we can see that we get an error because it's a bit too complicated for the computer to do. But if it wasn't containing records, it was just containing numbers, then you could see, or fruit, it would say apples, comma, bananas, comma, cherries. But generally what I like to do anyway is expand to new records and then expand further, and then I've got everything back where I want. I want each column to represent a different, unique thing. So this is the person who went shopping, this is their shopping number ID, this is what they bought, this is how much they cost. Whereas if you were to concatenate them into a single value, into a single piece of information, then I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't have apples on one row, column, cherries on another row, bananas on another. I would have apples, comma, bananas, commas, cherries. Not usually what I want. So if you get some JSON or some XML, it's very easy for you to be able to use them in Power Query, Power BI. All you've got to do, port it, and then parse it with JSON.